Okay, now that we've developed a WBS, we've developed a scope, we kind of understand the project and what needs to be delivered, what are the milestones. Now the job is to estimate project times and costs. That's Chapter 5. Getting a good estimate on what we think this is going to cost and how long it's going to take to complete. So, just as a brief history, even back in 2009, GAO, that's Government Auditing Office, did an assessment on why programs are having trouble. And let's just look, you can read the top, but let's look at the bottom here. Poor requirements and knowledge. So if we didn't set up our scope right and understand what's really needed and what are the requirements, programs usually run into trouble, especially cost and schedule. Programs generate artificially low cost estimates and low technology readiness levels. You're trying to win, so everybody underestimates. How can we make that a better process? Requirements volatility, that's that scope creep I talked about. Well, if the scope keeps changing, requirements keep changing, the project's going to usually cost more money. And requirements growth in inadequate consideration of changes. Goes along with the one above, but not just requirements volatility changing, requirements growth. Oh, I'd like to add this, like to add that. Keep adding on and on. So those things have kind of hurt us, but let's see how do we get a baseline cost and times for our tasks. So estimating is the process of forecasting those times and costs. Kind of, that makes sense. We're trying to balance our expectation with the needs of the project. There's two ways of doing it, generally speaking. We're going to go over these. Top down, you might hear the word macro. It's a group consensus, very top down. You'll kind of see some examples of that. Versus a more time-consuming method is actually bottom-up, estimating each task and then adding that up. So top-down, we don't get into every task. We kind of say this is like Project X. We expect this Project Y to be somewhat similar, and here's the cost. Bottom-up, we're taking every task and moving our way up. So let's look at those. We're going to start with top down. But why do we have to estimate times and costs? Well, it's important to support our decisions. How do we know we want to bid this? How much we want to bid it for? We're certainly going to need it to schedule our work. If we know how much time each task takes, we'll be able to schedule. That'll be Chapter 6. We're going to take the times we get here in Chapter 5 and schedule them in Chapter 6. That'll allow us to determine how long the project's going to take, whether it's worth doing, cash flow needs. So projects are going to cost money. When are we going to get cash for those? Can we afford to be paying employees until we reach those payment milestones? We're going to be able to generate that. We're going to determine how well the project's progressing. Once we put this plan together, we can measure to it. Now, we're not going to get there till way out in Chapter 13. We're still doing all the planning, but once we have it, we can measure to it. And we can develop baselines, and we'll see that. A lot of factors influence estimating. Here's kind of a group of them. Let's just look at a few. For example, planning horizon. If you're looking to plan something that's going to start in the near term, it's a little easier to plan than maybe a project that's going to start 3 years from now, just from uncertainties. Same with project duration. If I'm trying to plan, let's exaggerate a simple 3-month effort, that's one thing. If I'm trying to plan a 5-year effort, it gets harder to get that accurate. People who are involved, we'll talk about that. The project organization structure, is it functional, matrix, projectized, can influence the estimates. Padding estimates, employees are going to pad. You and I are going to be asked for an estimate. We want to come in on schedule and on costs. What are we going to do? We're going to pad it. Problem with that is everybody pads it, can't afford the program. We're going to talk more about that later on when we put some things together, but that's a real problem that you have to work around. Organization culture, we talked about cultures, and there's other, maybe political, other factors in there. All these, though, can affect the quality of that estimate. So let's look at some good guidelines. First of all, have people familiar with the tasks make the estimate. That's hopefully going to be true for you, that you're going to have experts in electronics, mechanical, whatever, making those estimates. If you can, this one's harder to do, can you get several people to make an estimate? So if 2 people are making an estimate and they're close, you're going to feel comfortable. If they're far apart, you're going to have to maybe do a little bit more research. But that takes time to get multiple people involved. You want to base your estimate on normal conditions, normal level of resources. We are going to pad that estimate later, but that pad could cost you to lose the program. You want to bid it the normal way, and then you and management can decide what to pad later on. Use consistent time limits. Everybody should be doing months, days, weeks, hours, whatever you want to do to be consistent. Treat each task as independent. The whole reason we laid out tasks in Chapter 4, our work packages, is so we can keep them separate and bid them. If you start trying to bid the whole thing as an aggregate, it gets harder to do. Now remember, top-down is going to do that to get you a rough number, but from a bottom-up, you really want to look at each task. 6 goes along with 3, don't allow for contingencies. Like I said, we're going to bid those either. And you might want to add a risk assessment. So Chapter 7, we're going to talk about, after we put this plan together, what are the risks with this plan? And then you may want to do some things to overcome the risks, and then we might bid those in. So you'll have, again, this is a multiple pass thing. The book's making it look like it's sequential, but you're really going to be doing multiple passes in real life. Okay, preferred approach. Be nice if you could do some top-down. You're going to see that from management. That gives you, many companies call it a ROM, rough order of magnitude estimate. Then you're going to develop the WBS. Then with that WBS, the teams, because you identified them in the work packages, will make a bottom-up estimate. Then you can put the schedule together from that, because now you have the products and the times. Now you can make a schedule, and then we kind of reconcile those differences. Well, management thought it was going to be here, bottom up thinks it's going to be here. How do we reconcile those differences? That's the preferred way. Sometimes you can do this. It does cost more money to put this together. Let's look then at these 2. So top down, usually derived from someone with experience. That's usually the senior level. They've been through other programs. They kind of have a good feeling for that. Go through some examples. Bottom up, each person who's put those work packages together is going to take that and roll it up. Okay, and we're going to roll it up to that top level. Okay, when do we use the 2? So let's look at this, top down versus bottom up. So if you're just doing strategic decisions and you're trying to trade off some different strategies, you'll probably just get the teams doing some top down macro estimates. Okay. If you're trying to, if cost and time are really important on the project, well then you're going to have to do a micro or bottom up estimate. If there's high uncertainty, you're not sure about this project versus that project, you're kind of trading off projects. This goes along with strategic decision making. Why bother doing a bottom up? Just do some top down. Same thing with some internal small projects. and it's maybe internal, it's your money, you're trying to trade them off. Again, some top-down's good. Fixed price contracts. We really haven't talked these yet in the order of the chapters, but we'll get into this a little later. But if you have to bid fixed price, that means what you bid is what you're going to get paid, period. It's fixed. Then you might want to do a bottom-up estimate so you have a good idea what it's going to cost you. Sometimes the customer just plain wants the detail. You have to do a bottom-up. DoD contracts, government contracts, that kind of stuff usually wants the detail, and you have to do the bottom-up estimate. If the scope is unstable, again, it's changing, and maybe it's an early program, again, you probably can do macro type estimates or top-down estimates. So that's the two types of estimates. Next, what we're going to go into then is we'll work through top-down estimates, and then we'll work through bottom-up estimates.